Hello, good evening everyone and welcome. Thanks so much for being here tonight. My name is Deirdre McSwain with Paul Murphy Real Estate and I'm excited to host you for tonight's event. This unit that you're in is in the Alexandre, situated at 336 Camp Street. And the street, the building, the CBD district that it's in all have its own history, which we can talk more about after the event, either with me or Craig. You can find him, he knows all about it. But it was purchased and developed by Cesar Burgos, and he beautifully and historically renovated the building just over 5 years, and he has been running it as a successful boutique STR hotel for those 5 years. When we brought these units to the market for individual condo ownership, the excitement was immediate. We had a building with these units that had amazing past revenue, and we were excited to share that with buyers. We sold 2 units right away, but then, however, after about 40 inquiries, 22 in-person showings, we noticed a consistent pattern, and we were getting feedback from buyers and buyers' agents. And that feedback was hesitation, confusion with dealing with the city's STR laws and permits, and we ourselves couldn't give a clear answer, and we couldn't get a clear answer from the city either. And that's kind of where we are today. So this search for clarity has brought us here, and to start off this conversation, we are excited to have Ron Loesel from Zach Smith Consulting. Ron brings over 30 years of nuanced leadership, from serving as the Deputy Chief of Staff at City Hall to leading major economic foundations. He's here today as our STR consultant, and we're very excited to have him here. And then joining him is the owner of Paul Murphy Real Estate, Elisa Paul Murphy, and I am the listing agent alongside Elisa Paul Murphy on this building, and we'll talk more about the units later on, but please welcome Elisa and Ron.
Yay.
Hi, Ron.
Hello.
Hello. So first of all, I want to say thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here.
I really appreciate it, especially because most of my job is fielding questions and being the expert, but now I just get to ask you them.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking forward to this. So Ron, can you tell us a little bit about what being an STR consultant means?
Sure.
What is your job?
Sure. So I'd like to start off by saying that I am anti-short-term rental. Now, nothing like saying that in a room like this.
Yeah.
Why would I say that? Because I am anti-illegal short-term rentals. Those people that are not taking care of the houses, those people that don't care about the neighborhood, those people that are just in it for the money and do not have a good guest experience. And I say this every time I get in front of City Council. I've been saying this since 2018, and every time the council members always snap because they know we have hundreds of short-term rental clients. But the fact is, those that are doing it right, those who have been following the rules, who have been good actors, have been good hosts, they're the ones that are being punished by the people that are not doing it right. Now, I'm always happy to get someone that's been doing something wrong and getting them on the right track, but our position at our whole company remains very much the same, because this is such a hot potato topic, and we don't want to be associated with people that just aren't going to do a good job and not going to be good hosts. And our clients are all very thankful for that, because they want to make the money they should make by not having to deal with prices being lowered by illegal short-term rentals.
Thank you, Ron. And you have helped more than one person in this building right here and recently, which I think is so important, because as Desiree alluded to earlier, when we were seeking clarity, it felt like fingers were being cross-pointed every direction, and we realized that's outside of our expertise, so let's bring in somebody, and that's how we got to know each other.
Sure. So this, the changing of an ownership of a commercial short-term rental is something that I was dealing with in August and September of last year. A non-conforming use of a commercial property, it remains a non-conforming use. The zoning department, the SCR department, and they're all very good people, they made a ruling. They stated that no, it's not a commercial, it's not a non-conforming use. I fought that for 2 months, and finally I got an email saying, great, this person that wanted to take it from their personal name to an LLC, we were able to do it. So fantastic. Now is the time to share with people how you can change ownerships of a commercial short-term rental. So in December, I believe it was, I'm turning in paperwork for it, and they come back and they say, no, that was only a non-conforming use for the person, not the property, which was not right. And I fought that for about a month and a half. And finally, the legal department in January of the city of New Orleans came back and said, Ron, you're right. I just wish everyone would say that. The world would be a much better place. And so then we started the process of, there were a lot of transactions at the end of this last year, and there's quite a few of them at the beginning of this year, from investors coming in for tax benefit reasons, buying some commercial short-term rentals. The problem is that since commercial short-term rentals are not allowed, a new commercial short-term rental is not allowed, there is no button on the one stop to apply for a permit. So what you have to do is you have to compile the information and you mail it in. Now, it's almost like mailing it through the mail because it goes to a mailbox at the short-term rental office. They then have to put it in their queue, and they then have to upload the information to one stop before they can get to any questions. That is a downside because I like to tell people you're looking at potentially a 30-day downtime from when you buy that short-term rental until that new permit is issued under the non-conforming use. So it takes someone like us, our company, who does this all the time, because we know kind of how to shepherd the process. Doesn't mean anyone's happy on the other end receiving our emails, but the fact is that we're here to support our clients who are either purchasing a new commercial short-term rental for themselves, or if they're just trying to transfer it from their name into an LLC.
What would you say to somebody that came to you and said, Ron, I should be intelligent enough to figure this out. I'm somebody that's intelligent, that listens, that follows the news. I've read the city website and I can't seem to get anything that makes sense out of response from the city. What would
Welcome
you say
to my world.
Yeah.
I mean, really, welcome to my world as a consultant. And again, this is, I just want to, say that the people at City Hall, they work very hard. They're really good people in a tough environment through furloughs and just downsizing, and business hasn't really stopped, although business has slowed down. I never want to say, hey, they're just not doing a good job, because they are. When I worked in the council office, 95% of those phone calls were just negative phone calls, people complaining or whatever. And so in the short-term rental office, you're getting neighbors who don't like short-term rentals, saying this one's doing that, this one's doing that. You've got others trying to get things done. It's a complicated world for the short-term rental staff. And I like to think I partner with them, and I would hope that they would think the same with us as well. So, I don't think it's how smart you are or how much you read. It is a complicated process, and there is no way to get around that.
What do you attribute the complication to?
I will answer that by saying, first of all, if you're working in that department, it's a hard field to be in, because you suddenly sour and you think everyone's a bad actor in the short-term rental world. That's just not true. The bad actors, that's why I'm anti-short-term rental, everyone. The bad actors have hurt the people who are doing things right, and you get all lumped into this basket. The second is, without having another reason, the ability to apply online through the One Stop app, they're having to go through this information, input it, and it's just, with everything else going on, Celeste Sparks is a great leader of the department, but she's often tied down in adjudication cases on there. So there's just such a stretch of people.
That makes sense. So not enough resources, not enough clarity, and that is kind of the life of City Hall. I mean, everyone seems
is.
to be trying.
It is. I again, when I worked at City Hall, it was a little different. We had more people working there, and then of course, COVID hit, and we had there. First of all was the cyber attack, and then after the cyber attack, when everything was paper, people were quitting left and right.
Oh.
Then we had COVID, and now we're in this budget crisis of how many hundreds of millions of dollars. I still would love to know the real answer to how deep that is.
So it sounds like you understand both sides of the equation
I
pretty
do.
well, and
I
that makes you dangerous in a good way.
Uh,
What did you find when you started off on this? What was the most what's the biggest myth that you would bust?
I guess I would start off at, the myth in City Hall and in city government, and yes, city council members and administration has taken situations of bad actors and they've painted a brush and said, you're all bad, we don't want you, you're destroying our neighborhoods. We go back to the whole Browns theory. And I like to go to that one because that's what was used as an example of destroying the city. The fact is, the developers bought that land. It was not housing, it was a warehouse. And they tore down that warehouse, and these developers were trying to create homes for sale for affordable, so there'd be a discount on them. There was no state money, there was no city money, there was nothing to help the developers be able to make it. So the developers sold the property. It was zoned MU2. Short-term rental people are very intelligent people, and they went in and bought this property. But what was the narrative? The narrative was short-term rentals are kicking people out of their homes and they're causing an affordability crisis. There is some truth to short-term rentals having a little impact on affordability. Not so much today as 2 or 3 years ago when all this IZD, interim zoning districts, came into play. Again, if the media and the elected officials have a view that everything is bad and you can't look at case by case scenario, that's when you start legislating by emotion. And again, this is nothing against them. I understand. I have 3 short-term rentals right by my house in Algiers Point. I'm used to it. It doesn't bother me, but I can understand why that does bother some people. So the biggest myth is short-term rental, the good people are good. They're good people, they're running a good property, they address issues when they come.
Just like any other group of people, there's gonna be bad actors
That's right.
and people trying to follow the letter. What, I hear a lot, Elisa, can a license transfer when I buy the property?
No, there is no transfer of licenses. I make that very clear. And people use that language all the time. There is no transfer of a short-term rental license. It is a new application when it is falling under the non-conforming use. I do want to quickly say that what is a non-conforming use? So let's say I own a short-term rental the permit ended on December 31st. And I try to renew it on July 3rd. Guess what? I lost my non-conforming use because I went over 6 months from when that permit ended to getting a new one. That's a big thing that people lost during COVID. They didn't renew their permits because there was a mess at City Hall and how they were handling things. There were applications that were in queue for over a year. So what happened is, it turned into a mess, and then people kind of, they stopped doing what they're supposed to do. So that's a non-conforming use. So as long as you are, let's say you are buying a short-term rental from me, it ended on December 31st. Legally, when that property changes hands, what we would do is we would get the application materials together. We would have to email the city of New Orleans and ask for that current license to be terminated. It has to be revoked. Well, our new one is going in place. That kind of comes into that 30-day period where you've got to be prepared for some downtime with this. That being said, you can get a new permit under the non-conforming use. There is talk of, and I would like to talk about the new legislation coming up when we're ready for that. How the city's going to handle non-conforming use of commercial short-term rentals may change. Not for those who have them now, but in the future.
So since it's complex, and it has a lot to do with timing, there's a little bit of a dance, is what I'm hearing. You're a good instructor, take people through that. Can you tell us more about what you just referenced with the new legislation coming up? What do you see coming down the stream?
So I work closely with the legislative directors of the council offices. I also, communicate with the council members as well. We're coming on year 3 of no new commercial short-term rentals. This interim zoning district would stop the development of short-term rentals. You can only have an IZD for 2 years. We've gone beyond that, so they had to create a new IZD, which then put a conditional use over every transient lodging in the city. Hotel, bed and breakfast, commercial short-term rental, anything dealing with transient lodging is a conditional use. What I am fairly certain what is going to happen when the new legislation comes out. So let me just back up. So we had this study that took forever to get done. And we had this very complex study with a million different scenarios on how to address transient lodging, which was, I was reading this, great people, desire, like fantastic. I was like, whoa, this is a lot. I'm having trouble.
It's dense.
I'm having trouble to follow it. So it went through City Planning Commission. I will say back in the days of 2018 and when we were in 19, when we were kind of fighting for the short-term rentals back at that place, the whole council chambers would be full. I'd say it was about 50 people at these because there's kind of a burnout phase for the residents who don't like short-term rentals, and they're fine to have that opinion, and those that have it, it really wasn't as big of a fight. So now it's gone to City Council. City Council has not yet written what their legislation, what they think the legislation should look like. Their goal is May. I made a call before I got here for something to show up on the council agenda. So maybe June or July there'd be discussion on it. That motion that will be put on the City Council agenda will be to go back to City Planning Commission, then to create the laws of what the City Council thinks they should be. I have been told, and I believe it's true, the restrictions for commercial short-term rentals and transient lodging as a whole are going to be very restrictive. We're never going to go back to the days that we had when people could just be in an HUMU and apply for a permit. HUMU won't even allow commercial short-term rentals. Single-family homes, the council's made it very clear, single-family homes are out in future legislation for that. So what we're looking at, the new legislation will not come into play until the first or second quarter of next year.
It's a long time
Which
away.
makes these current commercial short-term rentals more valuable. And that's where you're here promoting at this address, 336 Camp, the availability of short-term rentals. There is a benefit to having more restrictive laws because those who have been doing it right and doing it well, it should solidify their position and their investments. I do think it's going to be hard to create new short-term rentals. I think where they may allow them are much more in high-intense districts, or in cases where it's a commercial short-term rental is an accessory to a business, like it's on the second floor of a business. That's where the council kind of sees it going. But right now, I tell everyone, we have no idea how this is going to pan out because there's nothing in writing yet by the city council staff and by the council members. There's nothing there, and we don't know how it's going to turn out. I would just plan on it's going to be more restrictive, which again makes the current commercial short-term rentals more valuable.
More valuable, supply demand.
Yes, correct.
When you say more intensive districts, what are some that come to mind?
Probably your MU2s. It's going to be your high intensity, heavy industry zoning districts. Again, we're kind of taking a stab. I do know that like HUMU is pretty much out. which is a great zoning district because it does kind of mesh within the neighborhoods. They're also looking at like corridors, like maybe like St. Claude corridor. Of course, I don't want to say that by water. I'm not saying I know anything about that. Or Broad Street, or you know, things like that.
Highways.
Yeah, it will be interesting how this plays out.
Okay, that makes sense. For someone that is considering building their portfolio in New Orleans, may not be here yet, may not speak zoning yet, what is the simplest layman's terms advice you would give them?
Call me.
Call you. We appreciate it.
I mean, I'm serious, and the reason I'm serious is every address has its own complexities within the zoning ordinance, the comprehensive zoning ordinance. That's the Bible. You know, that's the city's Bible on how we conduct business and how we live in the city of New Orleans. I have always said, and for realtors, we speak at a lot of realtor meetings. I am willing to work with realtors to answer your questions on a short basis with no fee. Why am I willing to do that for a no fee? Because we're all in this, realtors and consultants like us. We're all here trying to make New Orleans better. As much as other people think we're trying to destroy it in certain ways, we are trying to build businesses. You know, I look at certain neighborhoods where now the residents in there with this mix of transient lodging and businesses, it's a great place to live because they can go to their coffee house right there and they can go do that. But you take away like Algiers Point, you know, great neighborhood. The restaurants are hard to make there. Barracuda is doing really well there. The others, it's really hard. Why? Because it's hard to get to Algiers Point. If we had some more commercial short-term rentals in there, sorry, Algiers Point, people don't egg my house, that gives a little bit more money to come out. I can't afford to go out every night, but people that come to New Orleans, they can afford and they will afford to, you know, they will pay to go out.
What would you say to anybody watching this that says it feels like they keep moving the finish line, the goalposts? You spoke about burnout earlier.
Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody means to change the goalposts. I think that new clarifications in the short-term rental office come up, and suddenly we're kind of catching up to, you know, the original legislation was an operator had to go up to safety and permits, they had to have their picture taken, have a badge, and that went for 2+ years, and now they're starting to get it. So there's a lot of things of how they interpret it. We have to be on our toes, what they say, to make sure that, like for instance, if I didn't fight that non-conforming use back last year, I can guarantee you the properties that we've done here in this building would not be done because it's a difficult process.
Well, thank you for fighting the fight for both sides and offering clarity. That's really important, especially for my peers. I've run into so many realtors who, when they hit up against something that is unclear, quit.
I don't blame them.
Quit and reroute. It's too much liability, it's too confusing. We don't do short-term rentals in the city. So I really appreciate your offer to our peers to be available to help field questions.
The easiest thing is, you know, a realtor says, hey, can you look at this, and then not just short-term rental. It could be, hey, I want to put a restaurant here. Is it possible? Oh, I want to do this here. I can do a quick review and just say, hey, you're barking up the wrong tree. That's not going to work. And I've done that. We can go further in depth for money to do zoning reports and to kind of do a little bit deeper dive in what you could do business-wise on there. We were here talking about transient lodging, but the same you know, holds here. CBD 5 is different than CBD 2 and how the city views it.
And you mentioned a lot of different types of transient lodging. Just in the conversations today, right here, tonight, I've heard, oh, well, there's this $1 million one down the street, but they have a hotel license, but they say I can get commercial short-term rental license. Send them to you?
Yes, one of the things that's happened because of this IZD is that people have been forced to go into a hotel route on some of their properties. And I will say that some of the people I know, that's probably not what they wanted and what they would have wanted to have there, but they were kind of forced into that route because of the stop on commercial short-term rentals. And then that's kind of then confused the hotel industry and what is a full-time attendant? You have to have 24-hour staffing at a hotel. There's a lot more that's kind of involved because now the city's trying to change the legislation because people were gravitating. Any developer, you know, the general public will say, oh, they're always trying to find a workaround. No, that's what a good business person does, is to understand what the laws are and to see how you can make it work or how you can't make it work. That's what business people do. They're not trying to skirt the system. These are the laws that are put in place. So that the goalposts do kind of change on the legislation on there. I don't have a problem though right now with the conditional use process for every commercial short-term rental or hotel, because while they're going through this process, I would like the city to listen to each one that comes in front of them and make a decision based upon that person, make a decision based upon on if that is a good match for the neighborhood instead of a blanket no or a blanket yes. I think if we can get back to smart city planning and see where this works, everyone wins.
So to recap, what I'm hearing from you is, if you're interested in investing in a commercial short-term rental, start by looking for one that exists.
Yes, because now is the time. And here's why, and this is where it gets really confusing. Right now, because of the second IZD, there is a process to get a commercial short-term rental through a conditional use. We don't know how city council is going to handle it yet. They've just started hitting their agenda and they've all been deferred. So we don't know how city council is going to do it. But when that new legislation comes out in
May?
Yeah, I'd say April, May of next year, that conditional use will go away, and then you're bound by the laws, and then there is no path for getting a short-term rental. So there's a lot of complexities in what you should do. You know, we've had some people that have sold their short-term rentals in the last, you know, few months for, again, tax reasons. And I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a tax person, I'm not an accountant. We are consultants in the land use business. I lost my train of thought because I always want to make sure and say that, because people say, you're acting like a lawyer. No, we're not a lawyer. I have my team that I call all the time on that, but I lost my train of thought there.
That's okay. I had said the quickest way, if you're interested in investing in a short-term rental, is to look for an existing commercial short-term rental.
That is the easiest way, because we can, it's not a transfer, we can get a new application in under the non-conforming use. If you're interested in a property for a commercial short-term rental, before whatever you're doing, it could be a business on the front or whatever, it could be in certain areas, please reach out to me, because we got to see how city council is going to handle this. There is an opportunity for some very tiny growth here and there, but the best bet for people that want to get into the short-term business right now is to find those who are selling the short-term rentals.
Got it. And look for an active permit without any stains against
Reach out to me. I will look at everything on One Stop. I will look at it and I will say, because this has happened to me. Someone came to me and they had a unit with quite a building with 4 or 5 or 8 units in there, and the big one was the 5-bedroom one, and 5-bedroom one was never correctly permitted, and that has made that property less valuable. So they would have to go through a conditional use to get that. Now, I've talked to city planning, because I asked city planning, I said, look, are you guys just going to take these conditional use applications and deny them all? And they said, no, they're not. They are going to review each one based on the property and where it's at. They probably will not support single-family homes they will not support single-family homes in a residential neighborhood, but maybe that 5 units in the CBD where one person didn't renew, they would look at that differently, because do you really want to put in a 5-unit building or a 6-unit building with commercial on the first floor and short-term rentals in there? You want to force someone resident to live there?
That makes sense. So look for one that's existing, look for one that's in good standing. You can help with that process. And then the other theme that I'm hearing is, although the process is complex and murky, it exists and it may not forever.
And one thing I will tell everyone here, and then anyone else online, there's no BS. with me. I am going to tell you if it's workable or not. Because why? We don't take money to do services and then have people upset. Yes, are we gonna lose once in a while here and there? Yes. But I am not going to take someone through a process. In fact, what I've offered for those that wanna do a commercial short-term rental through the conditional use process, we're breaking down our fee differently. So we're putting some of our money at risk so that there's an opportunity for people to bump out of the process if there's not going to be a path forward. I think that's, when I talked with Zach about it, I said, look, I just think it's fair because we don't know how the city council is going to handle these, conditional use applications. I'm happy where City Planning Commission is at. We just don't know where the council is at. I don't want to say someone has to pay X amount of money and then, 5 months or 3 months down the road, we're like, oh, sorry, it's not going to work out. That's not fair because this is a tricky process. So that's us putting our reputation and our name behind what we're doing.
Well, thank you for your name and for Zach Smith Consulting. We really appreciate you providing some direction. Truly, thank you for your time, Ron.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Oh.